Well, good afternoon and welcome to yet another episode of The League of Biblical Enthusiasts. Well, today we begin a couple of episodes on that dynamic duo known as Grenfell and Hunt. These two manuscript hunters are responsible for bringing to light over 500,000 ancient papyri uncovered from the sands of Egypt in the late 19th and early 20th century. These papyri finds were so voluminous that even as we speak in 2024, many thousands are still untranslated and remain in the first floor papyrology room of the Bodleian Library at Oxford University. Grenfell and Hunt's labors were rewarded with an amazing trove of ancient Greek literary pieces, including fragments of text by Homer, Plato, Sophocles, Sappho, and more. And alongside these classical texts, they also recovered multiple early New Testament texts, some of which we will discuss during this series. More abundant, however, were the many more mundane fragments that were discovered, including legal text, contracts, shopping lists, wedding invitations, personal letters to family members, purchase receipts for wine, grain, and many more types of documents. But let's begin our episode with finding out who these two men were, their family background, education, and scholarly career. We will begin with Grenfell and proceed to Hunt. Then we'll look next week at their work in Egypt and the story behind the exciting discoveries, particularly at Oxyrhynchus. Bernard Pine Grenfell was born December 16, 1869 in Birmingham, England, and he died at 56 on the 18th of May in 1926 from a heart attack. His parents were academics. His father, John Grenfell, was an assistant in the Department of Greek and Roman Antiquities at the British Museum, and later he was a master successively at King Edward's School, Birmingham, and Clifton College in Bristol. His mother, Alice, later in her life took up the study of mythological and amuletic scarabs, on which she contributed articles to learned journals. So he was thus set up for a studious life from an early age. Grenfell was educated at Clifton College in Bristol, where his father taught. He obtained a scholarship in 1888 and enrolled at the Queen's College, Oxford, where he excelled in classical studies, and he met his fellow student Arthur Hunt a year later. As a young boy, his health was poor but improved by the time he entered Oxford. He did, however, suffer bouts of depression that ranged from mild to severe, resulting in time spent away from his work, involved recuperation in Switzerland on more than one occasion, to a 4-year stay in a sanatorium at the end of his life. Grenfell decided to stay a 5th year at Oxford and was granted the prestigious Craven Fellowship, a 2-year research fellowship studying Greek papyri in Egypt. He joined Flinders Petrie, who taught Grenfell the latest methods of excavation and colloquial Arabic. Petrie had just purchased a large Greek roll from the Ptolemaic period, and he left it to Grenfell to publish. The publication was known as the Revenue Papyrus and provided new information on the economic conditions in Egypt during the Ptolemaic period. In 1896, he published the work under the title The Revenue Laws of Ptolemy Philadelphus. Although he did have the help of other scholars, the work was essentially Grenfell's own, and he gave convincing proof of exceptional gifts and established his reputation as an editor of Greek papyri. In 1895, the Egypt Exploration Fund, now Egypt Exploration Society, financed an expedition to find ancient Greek papyri directly from the desert sands rather than to depend on buying them from second or third-hand antiquities dealers who are often unscrupulous in their methods. David George Hogarth and Grenfell were sent to the Fayum district, where Hunt later joined them. The results were encouraging enough for a second attempt at another nearby site, Banessa, now called Albanasa, which is the ancient Greco-Roman city of Oxyrhynchus. Here, success was immediate and spectacular and yielded hundreds of thousands of papyri. These striking discoveries led to the establishment of the Greco-Roman branch of the Egyptian Exploration Society to study the current finds and provide for more expeditions. During 1898 through 1902, Grenfell and Hunt continued their search for more papyri and met further success in the Fayum and Oxyrhynchus. They also purchased papyri from the open antiquities market that found its way to private owners and university collections. Their discoveries at Banessa, or Oxyrhynchus, were published in a new volume called the Oxyrhynchus Papyri, which is still being published today. The latest edition is the 87th, published in London in 2023. The volumes come out yearly. Grenfell was elected a Fellow of the British Academy in 1905 and in 1908 became Professor of Papyrology at Oxford, a chair created especially for him. His abilities were rewarded with academic distinctions both at home and abroad. In 1900, Trinity College Dublin awarded him an honorary doctorate, and similar honors came from the universities of Königsberg and Graz. In the winter of 1919 and 1920, he was in Egypt and made many manuscript purchases from antiquities dealers. One in particular he bought is now known to us as P52, that is Papyrus 52, and it's the earliest surviving witness of the Greek New Testament. More on this in the next episode. Unfortunately, it was during this trip that he succumbed again to a serious state of depression and entered Murray's Royal Mental Hospital near Perth, Scotland. And this time he lacked the care and attention of his mother, who had died in 1917. And despite occasional rallies of health, he never really fully recovered. He died on May 18, 1926, and was buried alongside his mother in Holywell Cemetery in Oxford. He never married. Arthur Hunt, his long friend and fellow manuscript hunter, wrote a lengthy and heartfelt obituary for the Proceedings of the British Academy. I've linked to it in the description for your reading. Now let's turn to Arthur S. Hunt. Arthur Surridge Hunt was born March 1st, 1871, the oldest son of Alfred Henry Hunt, a lawyer. The family lived in Romford, England, a northeast suburb of London. His primary schooling was at Cranbrook School, and in November 1889, Hunt won a classical scholarship to Queen's College, Oxford, where he found himself surrounded by a brilliant circle of rising scholars, most notably Bernard Grenfell, with whom he began his lifelong friendship and collaboration. In 1894, Hunt also won the Craven Fellowship, held the previous year by his friend Grenfell, Bernard Grenfell. The fellowship enabled him to spend a year in Spain studying early Latin manuscripts, and he was becoming an excellent paleographer, both of Latin and Greek, and in fact, excelled in Greek translation over Grenfell. In 1895, we mentioned that the Egyptian Exploration Fund resolved to investigate sites likely to contain papyri and sent Hogarth and Grenfell as their first scholars. And Grenfell then invited Hunt to join them, and the lasting partnership began. Hunt himself later wrote, "A scientific partnership more intimate and harmonious than was ours during the years 1896 through 1908 has perhaps never been formed. In the winter at our Egyptian camp, we seldom saw another European. In the summer months, our editorial work was mostly done in the same room. Problems which arose in the field, difficulties of decipherment and interpretation were ventilated and discussed. Copies of papyri were exchanged for the purpose of collation and whatever one wrote was revised by the other. Hunt also contributed to the volumes of the Oxyrhynchus papyri series that appeared yearly to scholars eager to learn of the latest manuscripts found and translated. Hunt was appointed a Fellow of Lincoln College, Oxford, from 1896 to 1900, and was later elected an honorary Fellow. He became a lecturer in papyrology at Queen's College during Grenfell's professorship and took over Grenfell's position during his nervous breakdown in 1908. Now, for his love of country, Hunt enlisted in the Army during the First World War, even though he was over military age. His skills found their best use in the Intelligence Corps in France, where he deciphered cryptograms. And during the war, he married Lucy Ellen, and when released from service in June 1919, he settled down to a house on Chadlington Road in North Oxford to continue joint work with Grenfell. But in 1920, Grenfell suffered his final breakdown, from which he never recovered, leaving Hunt to carry his work of editing the papyri all by himself. Hunt and his wife had but one child, a boy, whom they named Gerald. He was dearly loved and had all the prospects of becoming a fine young man. But sadly, in 1932, the young boy caught the flu, went to the hospital for a minor operation on his throat, and while there, the doctors found a blood clot that had traveled to his heart, and the young boy was dead before anyone knew there was any danger. Hunt carried his sorrow personally. He threw himself back into his work and carried on. He was a tireless scholar. When in Oxford, he often worked 14 hours a day, even on Sundays. He's been criticized for not training a successor, especially since the masses of papyri in the Bodleian could have used someone with his skills to speed up the work. His working relationship with Grenfell was a scholarly match made in heaven. You might say that in this case, opposites attracted. Grenfell was gregarious. He enjoyed being with people in their company and was impetuous. Hunt, on the other hand, was shy, self-contained, and quiet in manner. He was the one studying the papyri alone in the tent, while Grenfell was out in the field, commanding the workers and directing their digs. But Hunt was known in his life as an unpretentious scholar and generous friend. He was a loyal member of the Church of England. He loved gardening and poetry. And Hunt died June 18, 1934, at 63 years of age, and is buried beside his wife, Lucy, in Wolvercote Cemetery, Oxford. His obituarist wrote that perhaps his most appropriate epitaph would be one of his own verses from his poem entitled Laborare est orare, to work is to pray, in which he said, "Where steadfast labor is prayer, and God vouchsafeth his presence there. Who cleaveth wood and moveth stone, Jesus said, worketh not alone." Well, we'll end this episode here on a summary of the lives and career of both Grenfell and Hunt. So much more could be said. As always, links to relevant articles, journals, videos, etc. are left for you in the description field for further research. Next week, we continue the story of this dynamic duo as together Grenfell and Hunt find that trove of papyri in Egypt so vast it's never been duplicated in the 125 years since first uncovered from those sands in Egypt. Now, if you like what you're learning and hearing, please like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. We're creeping ever so slowly toward our first 1,000 subscribers. For that, we're grateful. So stay tuned next week for that new episode featuring the Oxyrhynchus papyri find, brought to you by the League of Biblical Enthusiasts.